Hi, this is Lloyd Alvarez from aetuts.com. Welcome to this tutorial. What I'm going to show you guys today is how to create an effect similar to this effect at the end of the Coldplay video. We're not going to do this exactly. Basically, the band members break up into, they shatter off into what appears to be like rose petals. What we're going to do is just the shattering part, and the rose petals would probably be a second particle pass that we're not going to cover in this tutorial. But what we'll do is, especially here with Chris Martin, where he's breaking apart almost completely at the end, we're going to build this effect so that, you know, he breaks off into basically pieces of himself. Again, as a separate pass, we could do rose petals, but we're not going to cover this in this tutorial. The good news, though, is that because we're not going to do the rose petals, this entire effect can be created with built-in After Effects plugins. So no third-party plugins will be required. So let's get right to it. I found a photo of Chris Martin on the internet, which I went ahead and cut a matte for in Photoshop. So this effect would work very well with something that was shot on a green screen, for example. But I think it's important to have a matte as part of the source footage. Alright, so let's create a new comp. We'll make this a 720p comp. And we'll add Mr. Martin. So let's go ahead and size him up so that he is basically the size of our comp. And what we're going to do is we're going to pre-comp him because we're going to use the shatter effect, and the shatter effect needs the basically all of its sources to be the same size. So if I go ahead and pre-comp this, I'm going to call this Chris. And to this comp, I'm going to apply the shatter effect. So shatter. And this, of course, is going to be the basis of our effect. So when you first put on the shatter effect, it doesn't look very exciting. Essentially, you get this like wireframe brick rendering. If you play this forward, you can see what the effect does. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to create our own shatter pieces. If we look at the movie here, you can see these sort of like fractal kind of shapes that he breaks up into. So it's easy enough. So what we're going to need to do is create a new solid, and we're going to call this fractal. We're going to find fractal noise, and apply that to that. And then the way the shatter custom shape, I guess, works is it needs to have shapes that are defined by 8 colors. And if you look at the help viewer under creating a custom shatter map, it basically explains this, but it says here that you need 8 colors: red, green, blue, yellow, magenta, cyan, white, and black. And then it also tells you to use the Colorama effect to achieve that. So we're going to do exactly that. I'm going to add Colorama. And for the output cycle, these are basically 6 of the colors that we need. And it's basically you need to turn off this interpolate palette so that there's no anti-aliasing in between. Now, if you move these around, you can start seeing these are going to be the shapes that we're going to break out. And by moving this around, see, we're going to create sort of the shapes that we want. You can see here how by just moving these colors around, it changes the shapes. I'm also going to add black. I'm not going to add white, and I'm going to explain that in a second. So there's black. Alright, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-compose this layer, and I'm going to call this Shatter Map. Shatter Map. And I'm going to turn it off. And the first thing I'm going to do is go into my shatter effect, go into the shape, go from bricks to custom, and then select the custom shatter map to be shatter map. So right away you can start seeing the shapes that we created. Shatter by default has an extrusion. We're not going to have that, so we're going to turn the extrusion depth to 0. And if we move this forward, you can start seeing here kind of how this works. So you can start seeing like these kinds of little Italy style shapes is because if we go into our shatter map, you can easily pick out these shapes in here. See? So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna actually create a new comp viewer, and I'm gonna set it here to the side so we can see both of these comps at the same time. I'm gonna lock this one as well. So now when I make changes in the shatter map, I can see what's happening here. So the first thing I can do is change the scale of the fractal. So if I go under fractal noise and transform, when I scale this, it scales the sizes of the pieces. So that helps already. And then when I move around the colors in the output cycle here, you can see that that also affects this sort of output because it's changing the shapes of the pieces. If we go back to the comp one, I'm gonna rename this main comp, by the way, main comp, so that we can view kind of what's happening here. So this is pretty good. I mean, these are the kinds of shapes that I kind of wanted to go for. So this is a pretty good thing. I'm gonna unlock this again, and I'm gonna close this. So now the other thing you can see right away is that it all seems to be exploding from this sort of circle, and you can see basically this circle. This is what's called the force. There's two of them, force 1 and force 2. So let's open those up. So force 2 is turned off by default, and you can see that because the radius of it is 0. The radius of force 1 is 0.4. If I move this, you can appreciate how basically it's only what's within the radius that gets sort of shattered. And then this is the position of it, which if I move here, you can move this around. You can see how that sort of basically puts your force field where you want it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's put this at frame 0 first of all. And let's go ahead and go into the shatter map, and we're going to bring in our crisp pre-comp, right? And I'm going to use that as the alpha mat for my fractal, so that now I only have fractals in the shape of him. So when I come back to my main comp, I can now start seeing that only the parts where he is where I'm going to basically be exploded. Now when I move my my force around, oops, that's not it. Force 1. Okay. So now nothing's happening. That's because the depth here, you have to see, let's go over here. The depth is sort of the Z position for the explosion. Why isn't anything happening now? Because we're at time 0. We need to move forward in time a little bit. There we go. So let's bring this strength back to 5. And let's move the radius down. Okay. So now as I move this around, you can see here, it just basically breaks them up. It's kind of like a little wrecking ball per se. So I'm sure you're already getting an idea how we're going to do this. We're just basically going to come here and sort of shatter him around like this. But instead of moving it, well, although we might do that, is what we're going to do is we're going to animate the radius, because also as this gets bigger, see, he basically breaks apart like so. And then what we'll do is we actually will use both forces so that it has kind of two things happening at once. So if I turn up the radius of force 2 and move that, we'll have that sort of be up here sort of in the arm area so that they both kind of ripple apart. And let's go ahead and set keyframes for the radius. So we'll have it start, we'll actually have them start at 0. And we'll put that at 0. And then we'll move in time, let's say about 5 seconds or so. And then we'll just sort of scale these up. And I'm going to move this so that by the time it's scaled up, everything is shattered that I want shattered. And I'm going to do the same for force 1. And we don't want to go all the way, because if you look at the effect here, it's kind of like half of his body. So we'll just do half his body, so that it's nice and centered there. All right, and if we preview this now, you can basically visualize this quite simply with the spheres. So we can basically save ourselves some time by just starting here. So I'm gonna set keyframes for these two here, and I'm gonna get rid of the 0 one and move this to 0, so that now it starts basically right away. So you can see what's happening here. Now, one thing that happens, as you notice, is when the force field touches, there's this like mini explosion, and little pieces kind of shatter all over the place. This one seems to be more graceful. It's like they're kind of just, it's like they're just kind of ripping off, and they're very gracefully falling back. The way we're going to achieve that is by turning the strength slider of the force to 0, so that it still shatters, but there's no force. And so you can see now they're just falling down. That's because there's a gravity setting. So if we go into the physics, under gravity here, the gravity direction is set straight down, 180. So if I turn this around, you can see here how you can see where the pieces go. This all works in 3D, so I'm going to go ahead and add a camera. Just leave it up. 50mm camera works. And I'm going to rotate the camera around a little bit. Oops. Before we do that, we actually need to set, in the shatter effect, we need to set the camera to be the comp camera. Once we do that, I can rotate it around. See this? So as you can see, I'm going to kind of go sideways. When I move the gravity, it's moving sort of on this XY plane. There's no dimension. The dimension comes from this very bizarrely named gravity inclination. If I move this, you can see now that it basically comes forward or backwards, right? So we want it to basically go backwards. So if we move the camera back around, you can see now it's actually breaking back sort of in the direction we want this thing to go. So if we preview this again, you can see he's basically shattering away as we go back. Very cool. Alright, so let's switch this off of wireframe mode so we can see what this looks like. So if you go under view, you switch it from wireframe to rendered, you start getting the real effect. So I'm actually going to preview this properly. Looks a little creepy right now, but we're going to deal with that. Alright, so you can see here, it's starting to come together, the effect. What I would like to do is I would like to actually make this a little bit more controlled. So first thing I want to do is protect his face. So the way I'm going to do that is if you go here and you see under the custom shatter pattern, it says white tiles fixed. So if we turn this on, nothing's going to happen right now because we don't have any white tiles. If we go to our shatter map, there is no white in here. So what we're going to do is put in some white. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to duplicate, we'll actually just bring in another copy of Chris here. And we're going to put him on top first. And we're going to apply the same fractal noise. And this time, and Colorama. But this time, the output cycle we want is just ramp gray. So we just have black and white. And we're going to turn off the interpolate palette. So now we sort of have these little splashes of white. If we turn this layer to a screen, we have now some white pieces. And the reason I did this as a second pass as opposed to originally just in this thing, I could have easily added white, is that by having this on top, I can actually now control exactly where I want this white to live. So with a mask, because for example, I want the entire arm to break off. So if we go and look at this right now, you're going to see that anywhere that is white now is going to be fixed. It's not going to break away. So I want the arm to break away, but I want sort of the pieces in the body to not break away. So the way I'm going to do that is just simply mask away. See if I just create a mask here for Chris. I'm going to rename this Chris white fractal so we can keep track of what's what. All right, so now you can see that the arm breaks away, but now parts of his body here don't. And the last thing I want to do is kind of protect his sort of face so it doesn't look so creepy. And the way I'm going to do that is with yet one more copy of Chris. I'm going to put him in the very top. And we can just fill him with white. So I'll just do fill. And we'll make it white. And just mask him off where we want pure white. So as you can see now, if we come back here, so his face is kind of protected. We can, you can play with this because it looks kind of cool, how it's got this sort of rip there. So if you move this around, I think that looks kind of cool. So let's preview this. So see how now it's leaving these pieces here, which I think is kind of cool. Maybe it's a little bit too much, so that's this. You can clearly see the shapes. So if we come back to the white fractal, we can bring this in a little bit. And if you want to change the way the fractal looks or whatever, it's done easily when you select this. If you go into your fractal, you can adjust the contrast and brightness, and that see how that affects the actual shape of the fractal. And of course you could also do, if you wanted, you could do a little jagged mask here so that it's not, such an even thing. So you see, so there we go. So I'm gonna get rid of his shoulder there. So can move this again like that. That's looking pretty good. All right, so right now there's no fall off, and unfortunately I wish there was fall off built into this effect, but we're gonna cheat the fact. By fall off I mean the particles don't get dark as they fall backwards. They kind of stay in a full light. And if you look here, and in anything real, as you can see, as they go back, they get dark. And with a normal particle generator, and I'm sure this was created with 3D particles, but it would be easily to control the fall off lighting, and that would be that. But we're gonna have to cheat that a little bit because we're using this sort of older effect. And the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna go into our Chris comp, and we're gonna create. Well, first of all, what we would like, essentially, and this is a total cheat, by the way, we're gonna basically make the right side of his body get dark as it's sort of shattering away, and we're gonna do that just by creating a new adjustment layer, and then draw sort of a matte here for the area that we want to darken. So I'm gonna call this darken, and I'm gonna apply let's see, on the color correction, exposure, and I'm gonna bring down the exposure. See how it just darkens it off. And if I feather this, I can basically ease into it and just really darken that. Now we could try and fake this, sort of see how the red petals, we could technically also put the toner on this maybe and make this stuff go to red, but this is not exactly how that's done. That's done with a separate 3D particle, but we're gonna do that just for sort of added effect. If I bring this in, you're gonna start seeing how it basically tints it slightly red. There, it's no red, so it's basically darkening and it's making it kind of red. All right, so what we're gonna do then is animate this mask, and I'm gonna bring this in so that it's not there at all. I'm gonna set a mask keyframe at time 0, and then at time 5 seconds, when the shatter is done, I'm gonna bring these let's grab these points here, bring this mask in so that it's sort of kind of covered, and that might be a little bit too much. That's not too bad. See here, the red is a little bit too much, so I'm gonna ease that off a little bit, and by bringing the saturation off and the brightness also. A little bit more saturated. Yeah, so that it's just like a hint of it. So now if we preview this, you can see that the particles now sort of darken as they go back. I mean, it's, like I said, it's a cheat, and we're using the fact that it's, you know, shattering from left to right to our advantage, but you sort of kind of get an idea. You know, at least we can fake it. So now it looks more realistic, and it's kind of fading away. See this little island here? I'm gonna fix that here. So again, you can just do that here. That's what this is here. So we can just, I could create another in the white fractal. I can just create another mask to sort of break that up, and then hit subtract here. So now I broke up that little island. So now see, so there's a little piece. Maybe a little, I don't know. You could keep tweaking this to death, but all right. So I think we're almost done here. What we want to do now is just add a little bit of a camera move. So I'm gonna take my camera and rotate it around here, so it kind of comes around. So set a keyframe there for position, and then here at time 5, when it's done, let's rotate this around this way, not too much. And let's take a look at that. And looks pretty good. Right now the particles are falling down, so if I want to fix that, again, I go back to my Chris layer and then just change the rotation of that gravity. See? So now, there you go. Now they're going straight back. And you can animate this if you need, so if you want them to go in different directions. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you learned some things, and looking forward to the next one. Thanks a lot.